Hi! I am so glad you're here. There's nothing cozier than a softly crackling fireplace. Years ago, my family had one of those fake fireplaces that doubles as a space heater, but thanks to the pervasive Midwest basement mildew, we had to toss it. So I decided I'm gonna make my own. Now, it's not going to be a space heater because I do not trust my technical abilities enough to tackle something with a heating element, but I do trust my DIY knot skills to try and make my own fake a fake fireplace. And because my living room has a bit of a Ghibli fairy core theme to it, we're gonna make a Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle, or we're gonna try. Howl's Moving Castle is one of my favorite Ghibli films, and once I pictured having Calcifer sitting in my own hearth, I couldn't get the idea out of my head. I actually wanted to do this when I redecorated my living room, but I couldn't manage the costs or the time at the time I made that video, so we're gonna try it now. Now here's the plan as I've figured it so far. This is where I'm thinking of putting it. Here's footage of me from last week, trying to decorate, but alas, no fireplace to hang my stockings. Because my TV is resting on this board, I'm a little bit afraid if I take out this vertical board in the middle that it's going to lose support and it'll collapse, and I don't want that to happen. Now there is a tiny little shelf that is holding the television in place, but I don't trust taking away this vertical support. So what I'd like to do is make a little almost table-shaped thing to kind of stick in there and have the TV kind of rest on that as well. Jumping in here real quick, this plan changed pretty quickly from a table-like structure to angled supports in the front to just support the front thing that's holding the TV up. On the face of the fireplace, I haven't quite decided if I'm going to use Luan or cardboard. Just depends on what I can get my hands on. I'm going to try to use some spackling to sculpt some stones onto the surface of the fireplace facade. Now I watched Rachel Maxey's video where she makes a faux stone wall using joint compound, and that looked like a really big bag of joint compound. I don't need that much, so I'm gonna see if this works. Should be the same thing, right? I don't know. And it goes on pink and dries white, so I'll know when I can get painting. And at the hardware store, I also picked up this clearance gray paint. Now we've gone through the base, the face, and now we need our little fire demon. To make Calcifer, I had no idea what I was doing when I was planning this, but we're gonna see if this works. I went to the thrift store and I got this little lamp. It was $7. I don't know how much everything else was. Little lamp, about this tall for size comparison. Oh! No, I don't want that to happen. No, I just want the bulb out. Okay, the bulb comes out. Oh, don't roll. Take the lampshade off. Turn that into something else, I'm sure. And this will be the base for Calcifer. I also, at the hardware store, got this. It's a flickering flame candle light bulb. I don't know if I gotta plug it in. Oh, zip tied. Come on. Okay. Look at that. Let me turn the lights off. This makes me want to sing opera in the tunnels. Sing for me! Okay, we need to stop. So that's super cool. Hopefully this will be bright enough to shine through. This was the smallest lamp option I could find in any of the thrift stores. So I think the idea is going to be that the logs take up some of this height. The logs will cover most of the base. I wonder if I can take this off. Can I take this off? Should I try? Oh, I'm not gonna try. The logs will cover up some of the height, and then Calcifer will be sculpted around the bulb. And to make Calcifer, this is the tricky part. This is the part I don't know if it's gonna work. Pretty confident about everything else, but this is the part that makes me nervous. I got some plastic sheets that I think are used in cosplay. It's not quite Warbler, but it's, although I thrifted Warbler pellets for 79 cents. I couldn't believe it. So we have some Warbler pellets. We do have actual Warbler, but these are just plastic sheets that are heat moldable. I've never used Warbler or anything like this before. I don't have a heat gun, which I think is going to make this a lot harder because I'm going to have to boil the sheets. There are 4 sheets, and just looking at the height, there should be enough, like in theory, to sculpt the flames around it. And the only thing I'm not sure of, I don't know what the opacity is. I'm working under the assumption that this is the opacity that they will be. I don't see why that wouldn't be the case logically. This is the smooth side. There's a textured side as well. I don't know what to expect from these, if I'm being honest. Actually, a good test would be to see if the light shines through at all, and then we'll see if we're in trouble. Oh, okay, wait. Oh yeah. Oh, it'll be fine. Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Should I have tested this before recording? Probably. So far so good. I think I can paint these too. I just want a light orange and yellow blended cover to it. Hopefully that'll work. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm gonna go get to work. Before diving straight into sculpting around the lamp's base, I decided to see if I could take it apart and just use the bulb and cord. Though there was no way to fully separate them, so I just went ahead with the plan to sculpt around it. To have something to sculpt onto, I first built a cardboard base using some scraps and some hot glue, and covered the skeleton in aluminum foil. Because the lamp is so tall, I made 2 logs stacked on top of each other, and once these were put together, I started to believe this might actually work. The next day, I covered the logs with foam clay, texturizing the surface to try and make it look a little more like bark. I don't think I really got a very bark-like texture because the foam clay kept settling down again, but it looked alright. While that dried, I started on the fire demon himself. I measured how high the bulb was to make sure the plastic was tall enough to cover it, and set to work trying to mold the plastic sheets. Now, to prepare for this, I read that you could potentially use a hairdryer to mold it, so that's what I tried first. I put it on the highest heat setting and concentrated it on one area at a time. Although it didn't seem to be working, it did get very hot, which, I mean, yeah, that's how that works. I should have been wearing gloves. But as hot as it got, the plastic was immovable. So I tried method 2, water. I poured my kettle full of boiling water into my multi-purpose tub and set the plastic sheet inside. It didn't quite fit, and after waiting a bit, it still didn't get hot enough to mold and shape more than this. Then I thought I'd try holding my iron over top the plastic, not directly on it, but very close to it on high heat. Not touching it, but very close. This didn't work either. So I figured it was time to call it on the DIY methods. The next day I ran out and invested in a heat gun, as well as some gloves, which I should have been using the whole time. I also worked by an open door, which required some bundling up, as it was in December, and put my ventilator mask on, which I also should have had the whole time. Now I started with just these nitrile-dipped work gloves, and I would just hold the heat gun on one spot for a couple seconds, and at the top of it I'd pull the plastic up with my fingers. I cannot express how satisfying it was for it to work immediately, especially after the previous night's many failed methods. In the center of the piece of plastic, I gently pushed in the center of the hot spot, working in little circles to build it outwards to round out the shape. After doing this for about 30 minutes, my fingers got a little toasty, so I doubled up on my gloves, and although things were still a little warm, this was the best way to work with it. Over the next couple of hours, I rounded out this single sheet of plastic into more of a teardrop shape. I considered adding a second sheet of plastic to the back to make a fully sculpted shape, but decided that if it's open in the back, more light will shine out around it, so I left it open. It took several hours, but the shape looked way better than I expected it to. To paint the plastic, I read that you should clean the surface with alcohol, and I think there was another step I was supposed to take, but I didn't have the stuff to do it, so I skipped it and just cleaned the surface. Then I just started painting with yellow in the center, brushing a thin layer of paint on, and then switching to a scrap piece of foam to blend out different shades of orange around the outside. I used the caps to my paint bottles to make his eyes, and for his little pupils I painted the cap of one of my Happy Chap chapsticks and used that as a guide. Now we just needed a place for our fire demon to sit. The fireplace was going to be built into the shelves underneath my TV. So to start, I put some supports in to make sure that the TV stand wouldn't fall. This also gave me something to attach the Luan facade to, which is the face of the fireplace. I had my dad cut these out for me, thank you Dad, and I quickly realized that I gave him the wrong measurements, but that was okay because I had some spare trim and poster board on hand and just attached that to fill the gap. I also had to drill a hole in the side to feed the power strip through, and this drill stopped working halfway through, so I ended up having to chisel away the wood between the holes I had already drilled. And it took a long time, but it did work. Once the supports and the facade were installed, it was finally time to sculpt the stones with our spackle. First, I drew out where I wanted the stones to be, including some hopefully evenly spaced vertical bricks around the top of the arch, which I used 3 of my fingers to measure, so it would be consistent. I then took a clay sculpting spatula and just started slathering the spackle onto the luan. The first round dried mostly overnight, with some cracking here and there. It felt almost like frosting a cake. A really stubborn, still warm cake where the top layer of cake comes up with the frosting. But after several hours of spackling, the stones were all set. The next step was painting our fireplace. I tried to vacuum the spackle and drilling dust away, but got about 30 seconds of power before the vacuum quit. So I just went for it. Of course, whenever I sit on the ground, I enter Pearl's realm, and she always thinks it's an invitation to sit on my lap. So I paid the cuddle tax and got to painting. After I beat the paint jar with my brush because it was painted shut, and this actually worked really well. I decided to paint everything with a base layer of gray first, that way everything was starting from the same place. I wanted some color variation in the stones, so I started with a pinkish gray to add a little potassium feldspar to the mix. I then just added variations of yellow and black to the gray base to paint the rest, adding some shadows to the outer edges and the indentations as well as I could see them at least. I then painted the inside of the fireplace black, trying to add some texture, and then dry brushed some onto the surface to dirty it up a bit. And now, it's time for the reveal. I love it. I'm so happy with how this turned out. Everything actually went according to plan. And with a project that's so far out of my norm, I'm really surprised, but I'm really thankful. Not a lot went wrong, which is great. I expected a lot of things to go wrong, particularly Calcifer himself, and I wasn't so sure how the spackle would behave. And I think the only thing that went wrong was me not measuring this correctly and it being too short. Well, hello! Do you want your Calcifer? Do you want your own Calcifer? Look, I'll put right here next to Calcifer. Look, it's 2 Calcifers. Give me your Calcifer. Oh. So, I mean, aside from the height being wrong, because I measured it wrong, I did fill that in with some trim and some plasterboard. I'll have to add some more detail to it at some point. I didn't really know what to do with it at the moment, so I might add something to the top here. I will say, using the spackle was interesting. It was kind of difficult to spread and smoothen. I didn't really feel comfortable sanding it down because you're really not supposed to breathe that in, and I could have worn my ventilator, but Pearl is also here, and I just didn't want that in the air. So I didn't sand any of the stones down, and as they dried, they did crack a little bit, maybe purely because of the amount I was putting on there, but I just filled it in with paint. I just really slathered it in paint and filled in whatever cracks I could, and I think it looks pretty good. It still kind of looks, if you look closely, it still kind of looks like frosting, but that's okay. I do feel like if I had used the joint compound stuff that Rachel Maxey used in her videos where she makes faux stone walls, I maybe could have built the stones out a little bit more and sanded them down. But that tub of spackle that I got was the perfect amount because I used all of it. There are a few things I need to touch up aside from this piece. I think I want to cover the cord with some black tape or maybe paint it or something because the cord can be seen, so I want to make it less visible. I might want to add some like fake ash or something to the bottom of the thing because it does look a little too clean for a fireplace. So I think I might want to add, I don't know how I'm going to make it yet, but I might want to add some fake ash to the bottom. And there are some areas I have to touch up painting on the inside just so that if it's seen at an angle, you can't see where I didn't paint it black because I ran out of black paint. But really, everything went really well. And next Christmas, I'll have somewhere to hang my stockings. I gotta finish filming. I'm almost done, okay? Okay. I can feel the cozy meter has gone up. It's so much more cozy in here, and I love it. I am so glad you joined me today. If you like how it turned out as much as I do, you can let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see what I'm doing next and join the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to know when I post, hit the notification bell. YouTube will let you know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!
Right there.